In this video, I'm going to share with you the 12 things that I change every time I get a new camera. The first setting that I check and change if necessary is to see if my camera is shooting in RAW. Actually, with the Canon R5 these days, I've been shooting in C-RAW, and my reasoning for that is because it's a compressed RAW file and it's not going to fill up the buffer of my card quite as quickly. If the action's happening quick with birds in flight or something like that, I want to be able to keep snapping away and not miss a moment. So by going to the compressed RAW file, my card isn't going to fill up quite as much. You definitely don't want to be shooting in JPEG. JPEG is a lossy file that is not going to give you as much latitude without destroying the image whenever you edit after the fact. So make sure that you go into your camera settings and select RAW or C-RAW. The next thing that I change are highlight alerts, or blinkies as we call them sometimes. What this is going to allow you to do is review your images on the back of the camera, and any area that is overexposed that you may not be able to bring back in the editing process, it's going to blink. I like to take a couple test shots and see if I do have any blinkies, and if so, I'm going to dial back my exposure and shoot a little bit darker. Number 3, I turn off shutter release without a card. There would be nothing worse than having an incredible encounter, a once-in-a-lifetime moment, firing away, only to realize later that there was not a card in your camera. So if you turn this off, it won't release the shutter, it won't allow you to shoot without having a card in the camera, so you're not going to be surprised later on whenever you find out that you didn't record any images. Most likely, whenever you turn your camera on for the first time, it's going to prompt you to set the time and the date. However, if you purchased a used camera, that time and date may be set for a different time zone. No matter what, I like to check that every once in a while, because whenever I'm looking at my images and video files especially, sometimes I want to see them in chronological order, and that really helps to have that timestamp correct. I like to give custom file names to each of my cameras. So for example, this is an R5. So my file names on it are MG-R5, my initials. I'm shooting this video on an R7, MG-R7. So this is really nice. I keep everything organized pretty well. I wouldn't put files from the R7 in the same folder on my computer as the R5. However, whenever you start exporting your files and you have different cameras producing final images, it's nice to have them labeled so you know what was shot on each particular camera. Something else that I like to pay attention to regarding file names is the number that the camera is recording for each image. So right now I'm at 2,885 on this camera. So I have roughly 8,000 images left before that number is going to reset. It'll go to 9,999. Now the thing that I don't like to have happen is if I'm in the middle of a shoot, if that number gets all the way to 9,999 and then resets automatically by itself back to 0, whenever I go to put my images in order, it's kind of annoying not to have them in chronological order. So that's something that I try to pay attention to. If I'm going somewhere and I know I'm going to be shooting a lot of images, I might reset that number so that it keeps a nice order as I edit. While you're adjusting names, you also might want to go in and change the copyright information on each of your images. It's just nice to have that baked in there so that those files will always be associated with you whenever someone looks at the metadata. Everything that I shoot moves fast. Wildlife and sports. So I want to make sure that my drive mode is set to high speed continuous and not single shooting mode. There's nothing more annoying. Maybe I shouldn't say that because there's a lot of annoying things, but it's really annoying to be around someone that has all the beeps and whistles and everything going. It sounds like R2-D2 sometimes whenever you're shooting beside someone that has not turned the sounds and the beeps off on their camera. So that's another thing that I do. I go in and turn all of those sounds off. It's less distracting to wildlife then, allows you to conceal yourself a little bit better, and it's annoying whenever you're out in nature and you're hearing all of that digital noise. I'm always looking for ways to conserve battery life. I carry extra batteries in my pockets, but if I can make the battery that's in the camera last a little bit longer, I want to do that. So something that I do, I'll turn airplane mode on. Now I can't confirm that this is going to save battery life, but I don't need Wi-Fi. I don't use that with my workflow, so I might as well just turn it off and it can't hurt. If you look into your viewfinder and you find that things are a little bit fuzzy or blurry, especially the settings on the side of the screen, you might need to change your diopter. This is essentially like going to the eye doctor and picking the lens that works best for you. I've heard of many people returning cameras because they thought that they just wouldn't focus properly, only to find out later that this little knob was all that needed to be adjusted. You can customize the buttons on the back of your camera to set it up in any way that might fit your shooting style. For me, what I've done, I've made the AF on button my eye tracking autofocus button, but I've also added a second autofocus button on the back of my camera. It's the star button, and I've set that to be a single point button. So sometimes in a busy situation like what I would have behind me here, the camera might have a hard time latching onto the eye, but what I can do is just hit that button for the single point, and it's going to help the camera find that subject. And then if I wanted to, I could switch over to the eye tracking button so it maintains focus on that subject. But you can customize pretty much any button on the back of your camera to do whatever you need it to do. Always make sure that you have the latest firmware uploaded to your camera. That's going to allow it to function with the most up-to-date technology that the manufacturer offers. And finally, once you get your camera settings set up exactly the way that you like, what I recommend doing is taking an SD card, placing it into your camera, and saving the settings onto that card. That way, if for whatever reason you change something later and you don't like it and you want to revert back to something that you really liked, you'll have those settings saved onto the card and you'll be able to easily load those back into your camera. Do you have any settings that you change every time you get a new camera? Leave a comment down below and let me know. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did enjoy it, check out this one over here. I'll see you there.